I think privacy, like I said, is going to be the fight of the millennial generation. It's not going to be solved in the next few years. I think that we've created in society this incredible vulnerability, which are the largest honeypots that have ever existed in the history of our species, which are Google, Meta, like these warehouses of an exceptional amount of sensitive data. And that data is becoming more sensitive all the time because we share a hell of a lot more information with an LLM and an agent than we do with our browser. And these are massive honeypots. And like North Korea or some geopolitical rival is going to figure out at some point, if we don't decentralize this, or somebody's going to figure out how to completely leverage this for absolute chaos and anarchy.
Christian, welcome to Dealflow Podcast. Today we have CEO and co-founder of Mind Network. And I think your story and pathway into crypto is very unique, and genuinely really enjoyed doing my research, my background checks onto you, because you are building what I can only say is the holy grail of cryptography. HFE, Fully Homomorphic Encryption, as it's technically broken down to. We do like jargon in this industry, but one of the hardest problems to solve within the whole entire space that we're talking about today, not only in blockchain privacy, but also in agentic privacy. So, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Keira. How are you today?
I am very good, and I am very excited to talk about one of my favorite topics that is a big buzzword at the moment, the agentic economy. A lot of people say that the agentic economy is coming in 2030, and what this actually means is variable depending on the person that I speak to around what it actually means. So I want to know, what do you think about when I say the agentic economy is coming, and sort of strip it away to compare that to the internet, or how we work with the internet today, or how somebody is maybe using ChatGPT as their agent. But what does the agentic economy look like in 2030 for you?
Well, I guess what it means, I don't think 2030 is accurate, because what it means is just simply that our interaction with the web, broadly speaking, will be reduced to a prompt bar, and that the prompt bar meaning like how we communicate with an agent. That's happening right now. The stock market just kind of took a dump, I don't know, like a couple weeks ago, or last week, I guess, because it kind of had this, everyone had this oh shit moment where they're like, it's already happening right now. If agents can execute, can make API calls, get information, work for individuals overnight, 24/7. If it's relatively easy to launch agents, which it has become, first of all, they're going to do a lot more business than humans ever could. There'll be more of them than there will be of humans. And also, all of the software that we use, how much of that do we really need? So the agentic economy, I don't know. I don't know who said 2030. If that's part of you guys' thesis, or if that was like a paper you read.
That's just the number that's sort of been thrown around. But I do also agree the level of tech creation has been significantly reduced. So for me, I'm a process engineer, and I've always wanted to be able to create things, apps, and write code. Previously, I couldn't do that. Now it's just as simple as me holding down a key on my keyboard, talking to it as I'm talking to you, and voila, I can spin up my own customized dashboards, apps, applications, create agents that create content for me, do research for me. So yes, I believe that we're there right now, but the normal person who's in the tech industry, not in the tech industry, they don't know that this capability is here yet. So we live in kind of like a little bit of a AI crypto bubble, because we're also all we hear about, all we talk about, we're building with it and everything like that. But for the most people, I actually think it was a message that you shared on your LinkedIn. You said that it was only like 85% of the world actually knows about AI or is using AI, and of that amount,
15.
other way around, isn't it?
Yeah. Has not. Yeah.
Yeah. So in terms of that, like, what do you tell these guys, like, about the agentic economy, or, like, what's the possibilities with agents moving forward?
Yeah, it's a good point. I suppose the 15 that are using are definitely the most active web users anyway, you could maybe say, but yeah, there's a long, way to go in terms of adoption. Um, I guess so. I guess the way most people will use agents, like, most people are not gonna buy a Mac Mini and, like, and use and, set up OpenClaw and then, like, give it their own Notion account and email account and, like, do the stuff that the crazy psychos like us are doing over here, but what they are gonna want, they'll probably get agents coming to them from a centralized provider, like an OpenAI or Anthropic or Gemini. I mean, Gemini is, like, best suited right now, I think, just because of its of G Suite. You open up Gmail, like, if you think about the way most people are gonna use, like, most people, like, if you think of like, how savvy your parents are right now with email, for example. Like, email came out when, like, you and I, well, I'm probably older than you, but, like, when I was in college, I was around the first, like, first years or graduating years to get an email address. And this is back when my mom, no way, was using it, but my dad just had a BlackBerry. And, like, I would, to think of, like, oh, one day they're gonna be so native with Gmail 20 years ago was pretty crazy because it was still, they were like, it was like beepers and phones. That's what they were doing if they wanted
Mm.
to text somebody. So I think now if you look at how many folks are really savvy with Google, because Google really has made it easy between Sheets, slides and Excel and Gmail, and it's all in, like, this nice little compact, upper right-hand part of the corner. Their UX is pretty slick, and now they've also got, obviously, Gemini up there too, and Gemini's got access to Calendar and to all those other documents pretty natively. So Google's probably best positioned to launch a whole suite of centralized agents that people will use. And so maybe that'll be like the moment where we go from 15% to 57% or whatever through some, like, centralized apps. However, there's a lot of risks that come with that, and I think that there's a big trade off there if we're going to just kind of keep using, like, four companies for all like a lot of our, like, main services that we use, the way that we interact with the web. If we're going to keep going to, like, the same four or five companies, that's going to create a major problem. And we do want a robust landscape, obviously, of wallet providers and of LLMs and of agents and like the kind of key ways that we interact with the web. So, hopefully we kind of have that building right now. We have, like, a lot of folks with really good ideas about how to create, agentic marketplaces and how it's easy to kind of use agents and actually have protections in place and um, recourse pathways in place if things go wrong. Who do you talk to? I mean, there's no such thing right now as customer service and agents. Like, who do you call if your agent goes rogue and, like, trades what, you give it $1,000 of USDC to trade for you, and the goal is to, like, hit a 20%, growth rate, and it just blows up your account in 2 days. Well, what do you do? So that's going to be another barrier to adoption.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting things evolving at the moment. You buzzed on a lot of things I want to circle back onto. But first of all, so you mentioned the rapid rate of generational development with the technology. So our parents are discovering Google Suite and email. And if we compare it to Gen Z, who are now growing up with I actually read a paper not too long ago. So it was associated with this concept called the Flynn Effect, and it is saying that across most of the 20th century, the IQ scores actually raise between different generations. So our IQ is higher than our parents, higher than our grandparents.
Hmm.
But for the first time ever, this is one scientist, a neuroscientist, he published some research that was saying that for the first time ever, the IQ is actually now decreasing with the latest generation, Gen Z, compared to, I guess, I'm not too sure what the generation was before that. But it's because like screens and technology and AI, is it's like we are becoming more and more reliant on these tools, and we're not actually thinking creatively and logically for ourselves. We're just, being zombies, putting things into computers. So, is that something that we should be concerned about, or is that just sort of going to be, we're going to be having our own AI agents in our pockets? That's our personalized agent that knows us, who's a digital double, and can kind of be a little bit reliant on them for influencing our life.
Yeah, the latter. I think I try to steer away from that viewpoint because that's always the mark of every older generation in an economy at a given time. When you start thinking that way, that's how you know that you're becoming, like, the old like get off my lawn generation of who's alive right now. So I'm trying to push that off, even though, sometimes we feel that way. But like the thing, I think probably what's not being accounted for, um, I mean, like intelligence doesn't actually measure, like IQ, the standard IQ test doesn't really measure creativity per se. Right. And I think in the last 15, 20 years, we've seen the rise of this term called EQ, which has become very important. And EQ has become more important because before our generation, basically the only tool you were going to ever have in the field, I mean, you had a calculator, but like, everything else really was done with like pen and paper. And now we have so many tools at our advantage that kind of extend our brain and augment whatever kind of brain power we have. That actually EQ has been talked about a lot is like being something that's very important in the workplace. If you have high EQ, you're more likely to get along with your coworkers and more likely to excel at a job and in a career path. And so that's kind of a new phenomenon. No one was talking about EQ, pre 2005, 2010. So I think probably there'll be a new Q that kind of opens up now that we have like obviously not just a calculator in our pocket, but everyone's got like a brain that is smarter than almost any other. It will be smarter than it'll be a
Mm.
polymath and a polyglot, right? It'll be something that's like as smarter than the expert in every single field, cross verticals. So now that we'll have that, it'll be okay. Well, what's the next kind of, humans always value what is scarce. We will always, the highest paying jobs, the highest paying artwork, the highest paying, products and services in the world are always going to be things that are hard to build. That's just the nature of value is we crave what's scarce and what's hard to achieve and what's hard to produce. So it's hard to say in this world where like we kind of democratized intelligence, and decentralized intelligence and made it more accessible to everybody. Like what's going to be the hard thing to produce? And so that's why I think if nothing else, even if you don't want to play around right now with OpenClaw yourself and like whip up a Mac Mini and like in your own server and everything else and start playing around with agents, at least to stay tuned, stay in touch on crypto Twitter with all the folks that are doing this to see what's the easiest stuff. Because right now, what those guys are doing is going to be in 18 months, that'll be what anybody can do. That'll be easy. But you want to see like who are going to be the ones that kind of break through the glass ceiling and do stuff that's really difficult and then follow that trajectory. That'll show you where the value is going to emerge in the new economy and in the new workplace, in the digital workplace of the agentic economy that's coming.
So OpenClaw, it was a new open source AI agent that essentially lives on your computer and in your terminal, and it allows you give it instructions. You can talk to it through WhatsApp or your whatever messaging service that you want, and you can kind of it's not quite magic, I wouldn't say, but it's definitely an efficiency tool. So, what are you using OpenClaw for at the moment? And I want to bring the conversation around to privacy because a big thing is happening with OpenClaw is people are downloading this AI agent onto their computer that works autonomously through everything, and they're not perhaps thinking about the security issues of it. And then this is when the AI agent goes AWOL. It has access to perhaps their emails, their bank accounts, their private history, and that's also something that we are going to obviously be talking about today is agentic privacy and how what you're building over there at Mind Studio can fit into all of this. So, do you want to just bring us into the conversation of like what is Mind OpenClaw? How are you using it, and perhaps how are you looking for Mind Network to be able to come in there and perhaps be the perfect solution for all of these security problems?
Yeah, well, I guess there's two questions there, which is one is like how I'm using it. The second one is how does my network intend to interact with the space? Um, so the first one, broadly speaking, I wanted to make my job. I would love to have an assistant that makes everything a little bit easier. So mostly what I'm doing at my network is figuring out product roadmap and identifying partners that make sense that align with our product roadmap. Okay, so we want to go into OpenClaw. Well, who do we need to partner with? Um, I wanted to help me like line up, podcasting guests. I wanted to find documents for me that make the integration process easier or can actually just like basically do it. And like I can, send me out the code in the integration process. Then I can send it to my CTO. He can just scan it, make sure it's right, and we can go live. So it can help us go to, identify verticals, integrations and channels that we want to build into, partners that we need to go in there. It can help us identify those. It can help us actually code and integrate faster. So we were already pretty nimble at that, but now we can maybe cut off like even 80% of the time that it took us to do it previously, which varying on the type of integration could be anywhere from like a day to 3 weeks. We can now cut that range, more than in half. Um, so like that's kind of what I'm looking for it to do for our startup. Um, but my network, we looked at kind of like how can my network's suite of products help this space? What does it really need? The massive glaring problem in the agentic economy is very simply that agents are going to be talking to each other. They're going to be transacting value, number one. And if they're transacting value, then they're revealing intent and strategy and assets under management. They're revealing a lot by just trading and sending each other, and all the calls that they're making, they're revealing a lot. So ideally, you would have all that happen in in a private space. So we launched X402Z. Z is kind of the letter to denote privacy because Z is zero trust, right? So like HTTP, Z is kind of this idea that we buy into that Zama basically birthed into the world, which is, we had HTTP, we had HTTPS. These are internet protocols that allow websites and users and everybody to talk to each other. Now we have HTTPZ, where all that data will be transferred in a shared private state, meaning like it's just always encrypted, and it's encrypted with post-quantum encryption methods so that nobody can ever brute force attack it. Nobody can actually read plain text. Nobody sees plain text. That's the world that we believe is coming, that must come, is that nobody can see plain text anymore. Everything is going to be in ciphertext at all times, and it's going to be quite compute heavy to actually process it, and there has to be key sharing and everything else. What we've figured out in the agentic world is, so number one, you do want the transactions between agents to be secure if you can. So we launched a product for that, X402Z. And that was built on Zama's protocol. So it just allows, again, for like sender, agents, the agent that sent, the agent that received, what kind of token they sent, and the volume can be masked. Then beyond that, the real holy grail in this whole space, if you imagine billions of agents around the world accessing your Notion and your Telegram and your WhatsApp and your stable coins, your wallets, and all these things. AI memory, the memory of the agents, is really, really critical to have encrypted. Right now, it's not at all. Like, it's a security nightmare. It's the wild, wild west if you are using OpenClaw and you are using, building an agent and you're having it access, like the skills that you download to it. There's a lot of malware in those skills you got to be careful of. So you don't know that you're also downloading like a wallet drainer, et cetera, whatever else. So you got to be careful of that. You do want to run it in its separate environment right now. You don't want to have it touching like your actual workspace. The best way to do is like, separate computer, separate monitor. You open it up its own email account. You don't give it access to your email account. Open up another email account, give it its own Notion page. You have to buy it its own seats for all the SaaS tools that you want, ideally, just to keep it separate in case it does have some malware in it or in case it hallucinates or whatever. So we kind of think like one of the ways to start allowing that's really got to be like a firm firewall right now. It's very risky to just give it access to all your stuff. But if we can somehow figure out, and we're not doing this yet, we're just figuring it out. We plan to launch an OpenClaw service soon. But what we really want to figure out to do is like, can AI memory truly be encrypted so that when you're using these skills and using these agents, they don't actually ever see any plain text. And then, you can verify what they do. You can verify the compute, and without ever actually seeing any plain text. So I'll pause there so that makes sense. But like that's where we see the biggest holes in this world.
Yes, agentic memory is definitely a difficulty at the moment because you want it to be able to recall your conversation, understand what your intents are, and also to work on that autonomously around the clock. So if we go again talking still about like agentic memory and how you can encrypt that memory, I want to bring it around to how that's like an open source way of encrypting memory and working with that. But in contrary to that, we've got the big meta guys, the Amazons, the Anthropics, the Googles, and these guys have all of our memory, all of our information that we've been giving these guys, right? And that's not encrypted. So what are these guys doing with our information or data that we've given them? And how do we even like begin to pull our own memory back from all of these to use it in like a really more customized encrypted service?
Yeah, well, that's like a broader philosophical debate that's been going on now for a couple of years. It's what brought me into crypto, and it's still going. And frankly, this I think it's going to be the fight of our generation, meaning like the millennials. Like this will be the fight of our generation. I think that we're the last generation to grow up analog. And that hasn't
Mm,
been talked about so much, and people haven't really brought that up. It doesn't matter. But as the boomers age right now, the baby boomers are still largely in control of like they own more than 50% of all the assets, all the equities, all the real estate. They still hold a lot of positions, presidents, prime minister, CEO, et cetera, et cetera. As they continue to age and as Xers come in and start taking over more leadership roles, and then millennials, I think we'll start relying on millennials to like recall the way things used to work well when it was analog. For example, we're heading toward a digital cash world. Like we're just getting away from cash, and
mm,
you haven't really had a generation that's ever had to talk about the incredible sovereign principles that are built into cash. If I pay you, Kira, in cash, if I tip you, nobody knows that I tipped you. If I pay you for
mm,
something in cash, like we just take that for granted. In a digital world, we're not going to be able to take that for granted because every tip, every payment is completely trackable and traceable. And so the big companies, the big tech companies have access to information. Look, they are encrypting it right now. They are using encryption standards that are considered post quantum, but they're only encrypting it during transit and at rest. So there's a third state of data. There's three states of data. There's that transit at rest and then a computation, like processing of it, getting the insight
mm,
from it. That's where it's decrypted. That's where the vulnerabilities are. That's not going to change in the centralized model. As long as we have a centralized model where basically we give all of our data to to Meta and to OpenAI, et cetera, and they warehouse it, they're always going to have to decrypt the process. They don't have FHE is not going to be fast enough or cheap enough to actually use at scale for several years for them. Um, but the reason FHE is, I think, such a powerful technology, even though it's not totally ready right now, it's not milliseconds fast right now for every single application. And we can talk about that. Like we've had to be concerned about TPS. We kind of cherry picked all the solutions that we've built based on TPS so that we're always faster than like the chain that we're building on. At least the L1, if it settles to to Ethereum, for example, like we have to make sure that we're faster than 20, 30, 40 TPS, of course. But in a world where like we have to be like, thousands and thousands of TPS, like FHE isn't there yet. But FHE is
mm,
such a powerful technology because at least it creates this question of like, well, what if the method is here for data to always be encrypted, which kind of empowers every retail user. Every customer around the world can be like, okay, well, when this encryption method is ready for scale, we are going to have the potential to basically, if we even want to, hold the keys to our data. If we can basically, we'll live in a world where this is coming in the next probably like 3 or 4 years. Once we get like photonics chips and like once the hardware really gets fast enough, which will be like quantum or photonics chips, I don't know which first. But when we get to that point where we can do really computational intensive uh, heavy compute loads in nanoseconds because we're computing in coherent light, basically like the speed of light. It's like, well, in that world, users can encrypt everything that they're doing. We can have fully encrypted LLMs. We can have fully encrypted everything all the time. Never has to be decrypted. And if SaaS companies or decentralized projects give us the option in their UX to custody the data because we get the key and they can decide who gets the keys to decrypt the data and actually process it. Um, then at least the tech is there, the conversation is there, and anybody who's been a proponent of FHE has kind of had this aha moment. Like we are going to have at least the technological capacity to essentially like own our data and to say who gets to see our data, who gets to process it. I mean, the tech will be there. Is user demand? The question is are hundreds of millions of web users around the world going to create this demand and the request for builders to like build out the option to custody our data
mm,
and decide who gets to profit, who doesn't. Now, in order for that to happen, like I said, there's got to be like a grassroots movement. There have to be enough products and enough VCs and users that want this world. Like Chris Dixon is one of the most famous ones. He's talked about this a lot. He's one of the big guys over at A16Z Crypto. And every now and then he'll come out with this really bullish privacy post about how we're moving to like all the value of the web is moving to the edge. It's moving away from the app layer. It's going to users. But I think at the end of the day, like I don't think a lot of people are going to want to hold the keys to all their data all the time. I mean, right now we're watching self-custody of Bitcoin fall off a cliff. If you're watching, like right now with all the scams going on, the AI scams, a lot of folks are like, you know what? Self-custody is nice, but like there are so many phishing scams. You know what? I'm just going to buy the ETF. I'm going to keep it in Fidelity. Nobody can steal it.
Mm.
If somebody does steal it from me, I can call my Fidelity customer service rep. It's FDI insured, like FDIC insured. So I think maybe that will come off a little bit as we like answer as we start to build up more better security around all of these AI generated scams. But it is kind of writing on the wall, which is like, I don't think that a mass number of people are going to want to have to hold the keys and custody their data. But as long as the option's there, then at least we'll all be talking about property rights, data as property rights, and we'll have the option to. And some really crazy people will. Like all the people today that still use Linux, like those crazy people that are like,
Mhm.
kind of like the Web 1 principles of like individual sovereignty, like all those like nut jobs, like tinfoil hats, who I love, by the way, those are my people. Those are the people that are always going to like self custody their own data. But we at least have to have the conversation in policy think tank circles of, is data property? How do we make UX such that it can be property? People can actually achieve it, hold it as property. What's the regulatory system and the legal system that needs to kind of spread? We need precedents in courts to kind of produce these, to create like the basically the law of the land standard operating procedure. Is that okay? You have some right over your data. Maybe it's not 100%. The company through which you generate the data also has rights to it. There's shared rights to it. But you do get to say if you don't want XYZ to process your data, if you don't want it being used in this market or for that use case or for this research, or you don't want it being sold on the black web, or so the reason I'm so passionate about FHE is that at least it brings up these conversations and we can start talking about data as property, because the most valuable companies in the world right now, outside of like Saudi Aramco and a few of the oil companies, I mean, they were built with our data. That's how they got built. Um, so every now and then I do kind of like pinch myself that I'm like paying $20 a month to OpenAI. It's like, wait, you didn't, I mean, you should be paying me a little bit, or this should at least be free because you're building what you have with my data. So we're getting there. I mean, it's as much Keira, it's really as much like a philosophical debate that you see.
Mm.
Like, now the Winklevoss twins are huge on privacy. They're bull posting all the time about what privacy means for individual sovereignty. And that's crazy that they're doing that. We've got a lot of folks like that are kind of talking in this way. Biology obviously has been talking this way for a long time. And Chris Dixon, like I said, and Ali Yahya over at A16Z as well. And a lot of like really like key, kind of key thought leaders. So we now need to see if there's going to be enough like policymakers that take this seriously. Like, in the States, we've got Cynthia Loomis, who is like an early Bitcoin proponent and is just like planted her flag on the ground. She's going to make Bitcoin, at least in her state, an absolute commodity and give people property rights over it and make it legal to work with Bitcoin and get paid in Bitcoin and all this stuff. We need a few politicians like that want to make like data as property. They're the hill they're going to die on. So
Yeah, it's kind of like a bit of a debate because the big tech giants, they want us, or the retail level who are using their tools, free tools, so to speak, or very cheap tools, because they need our information, they need our data for them to grow and to develop their models or to make money out of us, say, via advertising. But on the absolute flip side of that is that we, as like the general person, say if I'm speaking to my friends or my family, they really I don't know whether they're just ignorant to the fact that this is happening or whether they don't really care enough or they don't think that their own individual data is actually worth that much. And if you think about like our technology age, we're so connected to everything, like, on your watch, on your phone, on your internet, everything on your car, everything is becoming more automated and more digital, right? So, are we still so far away from actually people understanding the value of our own data? Is that like a massive, because the big guys, they really don't want us to really know about it, but, we kind of like the mass population should know about it, and that's like a massive fight that is going on, and seems to be almost too slow. I mean, you've been building in privacy full time, with my network for the last 2 years. Like, have you seen the demand for privacy change amongst, like, the institutional side of it? Like, they're always talking about it. I mean, um even there's always the big cases of Meta going through the courts case over in America and what they're doing and how they're using user data for things. And they always say, no, 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 we're not doing too much. We share, we are here to everything. But the reality is, I think even some research just came out recently, like that's not the case. Even that these big companies are saying we only train our models on adult data, but they didn't have a cutoff for what is an age of an adult. So it's like such a debate going on constantly. And how early are we from like the mass population actually understanding how valuable our data is? And how are you guys going to try to be like the leading guys in providing privacy for all of us? Because I know that you're the first protocol to go live into mainnet for HFE
FHE,
and like HFE, is that the right way?
FHE,
Fully Homomorphic, yeah.
FHE protocol.
FHE, yeah. A little bit dyslexic. But yeah, how are you guys positioning yourself to win this privacy race and to make people aware how valuable their data is and how important privacy actually is?
Well, yeah, first off, you're right, and it makes me sad that, a lot of people just think they've been trained to think like, "Well, listen, it's a losing battle, and how valuable is my data really?" And truthfully, it is. It's true, like, your data gets exponentially more valuable the more you share and the more you allow cross-app sharing. Like, it needs to kinda be checking in on you all day, every day, like, multiple pings a day across everything you're doing, and then it's valuable, but it's still only one person. Um so you're right. And what we started off in the beginning only building retail products, Kira, which I forget where you guys came in, but like I think our first product was mainly retail, and then we realized like people don't want to pay for privacy. That was a hard lesson up front to learn. Retail doesn't want to pay for privacy. And then also if it's going to be another page, if it's like a separate URL and you've got to go to this separate site, it's a whole nother trust assumption. So like
Mm,
if they want to use CCIP, for example, Chain Links Bridge, but they have to come to our website to do it. Well, there's a different level of trust you might have for Chainlink, which is like one of the biggest, oldest, most secure, credible builders in the space, to like a smaller startup like us. Like we don't afford the same levels of trust, and like naturally so. Like whatever, like our treasury isn't as big. We don't have as big a team. Da 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 da. So like we learned that too. That was also more friction. So we did pivot to institutional. Um, and there, when you talk about institutional privacy, that's driven by regulation. So that's not driven by user demand. That's like there are
mm,
laws in place. So you see like Canton, for example, is a big privacy. They're like a permission chain and they're building out for like all the big banks. All of a sudden their token is top 20, I think, top 30, top 20 right now. Like out of nowhere, no one knew who Canton was. They've been around for many years, but like you're starting to see like stuff like, projects like that really blow up now because a lot of the privacy is being built in house. They're handling it themselves. They're doing the ZK on their own um, for regulation. So that's good. Certainly steps in the right direction. Um, what I hope is that you're going to start to see folks, like, for example, in this OpenClaw place, you're going to start to see these wins of where folks are making like a substantial amount of money because they found a way to wall their data and they're using it in a proprietary way and they're taking proprietary ownership over their data. And when those stories start to come out and they go viral and like enough of retail starts going, this guy is basically like, he's not that much smarter than me. He's not an engineer or a coder, but he's just taking his own data, the value of it, and he's generating, whatever, $2,000 a week. As those stories start to kind of proliferate, if they do, then it'll get to the point where I think, people that want to do the extra work or like manage their own keys and treat their data as property, it's going to be a flex. Kind of like, I own my home cash. When someone says like, I don't have
mm,
a mortgage, I own my home cash. Like, I don't owe the bank anything. Like, it'll be kind of like a flex. Like, I own my own data. I get paid for it.
mm,
Like, and there's going to be, there's going to have to be a little bit of like stick your neck out. You're not going to be part of the grain because you're going to be someone who like probably isn't going to have an Instagram account or like, you won't, the companies that don't offer you that option, that don't let you kind of wall off your data and have any access over it, you're not going to be able to afford to work with them if you really want to monetize it. And maybe you can on the side, but there's going to have to be an early wave of people that I think pull away from the TikTok and the Gemini and the Snap and the Instagram, like all the big like Web 2 layers, like they'll have to pull away from those and kind of go into these other products and these other these line of of apps that allow you to actually monetize it. And so it will be a little bit weird in the beginning, kind of like people that were using like the early people that were using what was the A16Z messaging app that I've already forgotten that was going to like it was decentralizing Facebook. Friendster, was it Friendster? No, am I thinking like Napster or whatever? But anyways, like, so I think hopefully that's when that's what I'm looking for first. And that's why I'm paying attention to the OpenClaw communities to kind of see who can do this. Yeah.
That's such a big ask though to pull. I don't know how many billion people are
Right.
associated with Facebook, right? Like 3 billion, I think maybe was one of the last, it's like one of the biggest social platforms, advertising platforms, marketplaces of the world. To get people to move away from that is such a big ask. So perhaps there's just more or less like an opportunity for something to build on top of that, or for these where people can easily opt in to you having control of their own data. I don't understand that, but these big tech giants make it so difficult, because they don't want you to do it, right?
Try
Um,
try deleting your Facebook account. Have you gone through that process recently just to see how if you wanted to? It is
no.
it's harder than closing a bank account. It's insanely difficult to actually not there's what do they have, like, deactivate or whatever, like put on pause, but to actually close your Facebook account is crazy hard. Yeah, for that reason, because like they don't like they need you on there. So you're right. I don't know. Now I will say this with Gen Z, even though they're far less intelligent than we are. I'm totally joking. I'm just joking. Don't. But like one thing
The research says it.
yeah, yeah, disclaimer. All views are my, not reflective of Keira. No, no, what you see, like, in that generation is, like, they're way more skeptical actually of, like, the big apps. And, like,
Mm,
they grew up from the time and we didn't know any better. We just gave these kids phones at 10 years old, and we enabled social media when they were 13, and, like, the charting is pretty clear. Like, it's had basically a net it's not there's no net benefit to it. Like, it's hurt young girls and young boys of that
mm,
generation with mental health and everything else. So, that might be the generation that as they age starts to really be a driver for this whole philosophy of like we don't want to interact with protocols and apps that are going to mine our data and make us sick in the process. Like we insist on actually having some ownership and some more say and like actually dare I say income or revenue or proprietorship over the products that get generated with my mental health information, my user information, my geolocation information, my trading information, my interests, my copy. I mean, how you write is also something that's used in everything. So I think that was
mm.
kind of a wave that will help this whole movement. But you're right. Yeah, like there's 3 or 3.5 billion people on Facebook and Instagram and such on. It's trying to get people to get off those accounts is really hard. And I'm not saying that you necessarily have to. I just think that like the folks that are going to show us the way probably are not going to be using those tools. They'll be finding other ways to kind of interact online where they retain proprietorship over their data, like who gets to see it and how and why.
Mm,
So that's all going to be back end stuff, but in the UX obviously. But that's the other thing that's really weird with agents is like I said, agents are collapsing the entire web into a prompt bar. So
mm,
that's already started this shift, Keira, away from digital brand loyalty. Like, think about it. If you're 15 right now and you haven't ever had to use Google, over the next 10 years of your life, you're not going to need to use Google to search. You probably never will. You're going to use agents. Agents will use browsers. Why would you interact directly with a browser and like keep typing it over and over again and look at SEO and all like the hits that come up because the company's paying top dollar for SEO, but it's not what you need at all. Like, just let agents
mm,
do that. Let agents find the tools that you need. So like that's going to start to I think detach us from the brand loyalty that people like you and I take for granted because Google's been around since we were teenagers. That's the browser that you use. So like maybe that disassociation kind of helps push us in the right direction as well.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see how it evolves because your agent is going to know, like you mentioned, your personality, your preferences, and that's gonna really disrupt the whole entire advertising or SEO models because that is just a big payment game. And if these big giant companies no longer have access to that data, it's going to like, yeah, essentially it's just more becoming more decentralized and more independent. But then how do you still find, I mean, sometimes adverts are nice, like, like sometimes it's nice that they use my data. They're showing me things that maybe I didn't know that I needed to know. But yeah, I guess, yeah, well, only time will tell.
Yeah.
But anyway, I want to flip it back around to what my network is and what you're building there. It's you mentioned initially, so there's the way that when maybe I'm sending money to you or having a conversation or whatever it is, there's 3 levels of privacy protection that happens in this whole entire sending of information across the internet. So, did you mention it? First is encrypted when I send it. It can be encrypted also when there's the computation side, and then it's also stored.
Mhm.
So at the moment, there's different privacy solutions out there, and do you want to give like a high level overview of like what you are actually building there at my network, and how is it different from any other privacy layer out there? And also, like the thing with privacy is just people just expect it's just a fundamental. People don't go seeking it. Like you just think that your messages are private. So like that's the really difficult thing about building in this whole entire FHE, FHE ecosystem is that people don't really know where to find it. Like, how do you even tell people around it that, I mean, you've now switched to institutional away from retail because the retail didn't have that awareness around it. So why is it so important that you can now do computations on encrypted data? Like what kind of economies is that going to unlock? You mentioned at the very start, like Wall Street has just found out that agents can talk to agents and can actually do work better than humans, which is going to try to change the whole entire financial system. So that's like a definite interesting part, I think, where privacy is going to come like into trading strategies and the financial side of it. But like also, where else can you see new economies unlocking with now encrypted agent to agent transactions?
Yeah, it's really exciting to think about. To echo your sentiment, we've been in the Chainlink build program for a couple of years, and when we were first in there, one of the leaders of the build program, he's become a dear friend. His name is Sam. When he finally wrapped his head around what FHE is and does and what it means, the way he started pitching us, introducing us to other folks, because that's part of his purview, he would say, they're trying to make my network is trying to make the web work the way that we all thought it worked. We didn't realize
Mm,
that your data is being shared all the time. It's not actually secured. I mean, yeah, it's encrypted when it's in storage and like, but like, this is the way we all kind of just assumed that the web worked with our data, and it isn't at all. So yeah, there's several. You can kind of look at, they call it like privacy enhancing technologies, PETs. Is the name of the vertical in which we lie. So you do also have ZK. Zero knowledge proofs have been around a lot longer. They're a little more battle tested, and they're certainly having their moment right now. You
mm,
Cash kind of grabbing like all the share or a big part of the share, attention share in privacy, because ZK proofs have been exposed more to SOC 2 Type 2 environments and ISO 20000 to like 22 environments. They're a little more battle tested. JP Morgan was experimenting with ZK proofs in 2016. So
wow.
it's got a little bit of a lead on us. But the problem with zero knowledge proofs is that whoever is generating the proof sees data in its raw state. They see the
Mm,
text. So there's a trust assumption there. So you also don't see. So for a protocol like Zcash, which is just basically trying to their attempt is to be a private Bitcoin, um, where the value is the network. Like you're buying Zcash, and what the network is doing is just verifying transactions in Zcash. That's a great way as an investor to get exposure to a privacy market. It's also a great tool as a user to just like have a type of money that you can use to pay other folks, in a discreet way. However, it's not like this programmable layer where you can like do a lot with it. Like you can't, you know, all the things that we could maybe do with like RWAs or agents or deep, and you can't do with Zcash. So um, that's one kind of drawback right now. It's like the leading zero knowledge proof protocol in in our industry. And then the other one, like I said, is also the fact that like there's a trust assumption with ZK because someone always going to see the raw data.
mm,
You do also have multi-party computation. The first big MPC project was Nillion. Nillion does use a little homomorphic encryption too, and they also, I think, use some ZK. So people have started to blend these pets together to achieve what is the ultimate goal, which is just privacy for users. So multi-party computation is essentially like an advanced way of like key sharing. where access processors of the data are kind of selected. And so it's good for an environment where you don't have like millions of folks that are going to process the data, but maybe a smaller set. FHE is the holy grail of pets. It's the holy grail of cryptography, and it's been called that for decades because it's the only one that allows data to remain in an encrypted state during the 3 stages of data, right? Processing,
Mm.
transit, and rest. The problem with it is that it's very computationally intensive. So, like when you take a data set and you encrypt it with FHE, you expand the data set. It becomes a lot larger
Huh.
because ultimately you have to create noise and sort of like noise is like a technical term. Obviously, that means like you create more data than the actual data set itself because that makes it really hard to brute force attack and really hard to figure out, like virtually impossible computationally or unfeasible or to actually get the plain text or the key. So um, that's why FHE is superior cryptographically. On the ground right now, what you're seeing is a lot of enclaves plus FHE or enclave plus CK. So trusted execution environments refer to the hardware. Again, you're like processing data. You are seeing the raw data, but it's very secure and it's a great like kind of I think it's really kind of like a bridge solution. It's bridging us over the next few years until FHE is fast until computation gets fast enough at the hardware level to basically be running FHE pervasively. But it has its vulnerabilities. It's got a single point of failure vulnerability because it's the actual hardware. It's open to side channel attacks, which has been proven again and again. But for right now, it's a good bridge solution. And we've done some work with some TE providers where we've like added FHE like to the enclave just to kind of make it a little bit more secure. But you're seeing this with projects like Switchboard, which is an Oracle provider using enclaves. I mean, even NVIDIA has got basically a department right now with TEEs, Dell, Google. So these big companies have FHE departments as well, but they also have TEs that they're using, like I said, right now for a bridge solution. Now, when you start thinking about all the applications, obviously, if all of your agent communication could be secured, it's not really so much that, well, which vertical will pop off, DeFi, AI, DePIN, whatever. I don't know that anyone would pop off sooner than later because it had access to FHE. It's just that like one of the major friction points of using crypto generally is that it's your wallet, your keys. Um, you really need to be able to protect that wallet and protect the data that is extractable from that wallet. Assets under management, trading history, prompt history, geolocation if that's a thing, API tools being used, calls made. You really want to make that secure. So, right now there are a couple ZK solutions on the market that I've been reading about over the last couple of weeks in this world. I can't pull them up right now because there's like every day there's some new article on X. But and the other thing about X just basically just their team just basically said like here's a way to get better exposure on X is to write articles. So now everybody and their sister has got AI writing articles on X. And so you have to like go through these like 10-20 minute articles to realize whether they're bullshit or not. And it's just been so much reading. But there have been some that have stuck out that I can't recall at the moment. So it's not a great answer to your question, the question of like where are we going to see it like take hold the most, or like what new verticals is it going to open up, what new possibilities and use cases
Mm.
open up. I mean, I think broadly it's just going to open everything up because this is a friction to use all agents. But I mean, obviously, the first use cases from over the last, I think, 2 years, what we've seen users really want to use agents for is here's a separate wallet. I'm going to give you agent I'm going to put $5,000 in there. Your job is to trade this 24/7. I'm going to put some parameters in, like I don't want you shorting. Maybe you give it some directions, like please don't short. That's super risky, or maybe you do, but it can do options. It can find all the best lending, all the best staking yield. It can find, all the best trading strategies. It can find inefficiencies in the market. Um, that's basically what people want first before they have an assistant to do their job. What it seems like the big driving use case around the world is going to be like trade my portfolio 24/7 and just beat the market on an annual return.
But if everyone is doing that, is it still going to work? If everyone's I suppose it depends on their individual strategy,
Exactly.
right?
Eventually,
Yeah.
yeah, eventually, no, because like alpha is alpha. Like if everyone is making the same trade and it becomes crowded, then there's less upside for sure. But where I think we're so far from that.
Mm.
I mean, maybe in terms of a Bitcoin trade, maybe not, because quant firms and hedge funds and like, all the big traders are already using it for like the best assets. But you've got a lot of people in there that are going to trade. I mean, there's tons of assets now. I mean, there's tons of tokens
Yeah.
of crypto, and you've got the big companies that are tokenizing equities and commodities around the world. And there's going to be a lot of variance. And like Ondo might be the first to come to market with a tokenized commodity ETF that has gold, silver, and uranium in it, or they might have the first tokenized REIT that's got basically a bunch of like pristine commercial real estate in San Francisco, Paris, and Milan or something, whatever. And like,
Mm.
so finding that stuff early as that stuff comes on the market, there's definitely going to be some arbitrage. And so if you've got an agent, like finding those opportunities first, we're at the beginning of like Larry Fink says, like we're about to tokenize a multi-$100 trillion economy. And it's not all going to happen at once. Like BlackRock is not going to it's not going to be like BlackRock instantly is going to make all of these really cool tokenized equities and ETFs and commodities available to everybody at once. That's not the way it's going to work. Like a lot of these startups are going to be the first ones to market, or like family offices like Draper. I think it was Tim Draper was working on some, novel, triple X levered, top 30 crypto ETF, like those kind of novel products. So like,
Mm.
who knows about these things? Well, your agent can know if you've got the right prompt. So to the best prompter go the spoils, in one sense.
Yeah.
Being creative with how you prompt is certainly one way, giving it access to the best DeFi protocols and the best like crypto tools that it needs to like make these trades. So like there's definitely going to be arbitrage and a lot of opportunity. Eventually, sure. Like eventually, I don't know when, months, years, but like certain trades will get crowded and there won't be the alpha there anymore. But over the next 6, 7 years, I think it's going to be the Wild West. There's a lot of opportunity.
Yeah, I agree, right? There's gonna be a lot of, different tokenized opportunities, and tokens are essentially just the currency for agents to trade anything in the world, and blockchains are the rails that allow that, instant settlement, global transactions 24/7. So for in my eyes, yes, blockchain with AI and privacy is kinda like the perfect little threesome happening over there. So, and it will protect those strategies as well, which will cut like the babies from the adults and everything like that. So I want to ask another question because I know that you guys are looking at building your own layer one blockchain. Is it? So how like
No, we're not.
is so you? Oh, you're not. Oh, okay, okay.
No,
False information.
also,
Cancel on that
we are not.
one.
We have no interest.
Okay. Okay, in saying that, so you're talking about like ZK Cash, which is like a private layer for Bitcoin. Do you reckon there's going to be opportunity for a FHE stablecoin kind of thing, like
Definitely.
fully encrypted stablecoin, like, or is that going to be too expensive?
Zama has a confidential token. They've launched it. So, yeah, I mean, there could be. You obviously have like Phoenix and Inco. You've got an L1 and L2 FHE native L1 and L2s. It's going to be more like US. So like Circle has a privacy team. They they actually haven't checked in a few months to know what's going on with it. But like, yeah, the idea would be you will have access to private stable coins, private USDC. Um, there's a lot to think through there because like, you can kind of always like you can kind of always find ways to figure out like who sent what. And so if you're going to add all this computation and it's not really bulletproof, through like FHE or whatever, um, you have to kind of ask yourself, like, is the juice worth the squeeze?
Mm.
But yeah, it's been on Circle's radar for quite some time. Uh,
Okay, cool.
was it Circle or uh, no Coin? So Coinbase is yeah. So Circle's got that, but then Coinbase is working. Coinbase acquired Iron Horse. If you saw that, I think it was last year. Um, so that's they've got a whole nother privacy team too, and they're working on private payments. I mean, there's kind of like steps that to go in this direction, Kiara. Like the first thing people
Mhm.
figure out, like the first thing that like a Coinbase would be interested in doing is figuring out the payment piece. It's like they want to see a world where everyone's paid in stable coins, like not ACH deposit from an employer to an employee 2 weeks a month or once a month. But they know if you're using stablecoin, that means once someone's got your address. They see how much you make.
Yeah. That's what I was
Coinbase,
kind of getting to.
yeah, they're trying to solve that problem first, like obfuscating payments. And then, yeah, you can get to the point where eventually you'll have an FHE stablecoin.
We'll see. So anyway, let's take it back. So why did you want to solve this problem? Like, what was it? Did you come across an issue in the beginning where you're like, FHE, like, I want to solve this. This is going to be my life mission, because it seems like it's one of the hardest products to be building out there. You're up against so much regulatory noise, and even just to educate people this is possible. Like you said, people already thought that this is what was happening, but it's obviously not. Like, it seems like you've picked one of the most hardest verticals to innovate in, and one of the most expensive verticals to innovate in. You've been doing it for 2 years now. Are you still bullish on this decision? Do you wish that you made any different decisions? And like, or is it you're like, this is me, this is my life mission to accomplish privacy for blockchain and AI?
Man, I'm a privacy evangelist. It's been 3 years now with my network team. I was lucky
Hmm.
with my co-founders. It was 2 years before that, I was in DeepIn, and, I was at a DeepIn protocol, and one of the founders there was an absolute stud in ZK, and he was from Waterloo. And so that's kind of what red pilled me into the world and learning about ZK. I remember like first learning about ZK Starks and ZK Starks in like 2019 at like ETH Denver or wherever, and just being so enamored with something that was not I was not like a math PhD. It's like, why am I interested in this? I just think that, yeah. So, broadly speaking, I found a home. I found a calling. I think privacy, like I said, is going to be the fight of the millennial generation. It's not going to be solved in the next few years.
Mm.
Um, I think that we've created in society this incredible vulnerability, which are the largest honeypots that have ever existed in the history of our species, which are Google, Meta, like these warehouses of an exceptional amount of sensitive data. And that data is becoming more sensitive all the time because we share a hell of a lot more information with an LLM and an agent than we do with our browser. And these are
Mhm.
massive honeypots. And like, North Korea or some geopolitical rival is going to figure out at some point, if we don't decentralize this, like, or somebody's going to figure out how to completely leverage this for absolute chaos and anarchy. So that's like big picture. And then I just think individually, like the value that we're creating in the world, like the world is being completely turned into ones and zeros. The physical world, weather, land, like we found a way to like turn everything digital and then package it and sell it and commoditize it. So that means that like data is the industry, and that's a big word. There's a lot that goes with that. There's big data storage and there's computation, and of course,
Mm.
like this is where I think everything is gonna. I mean, like right now, it's like civilization is basically wobbling on an axis, and which way we go depends on how we approach this data problem and whether we're going to give some sort of sovereignty over data to people. Like, not give it, but we have to start deciding. Like, look, in the founding documents of a lot of the best countries, like the founding documents, the constitutions of the best countries on earth, it's usually said like, you as a citizen have rights, but those rights are not granted by government. They're granted by a power higher than government. It's government's job to secure those rights. That's what the best nations have in their founding documents, which kind of allows everything else to work. So we need to start having that conversation around the data that you generate that's captured by hardware and digital products. Like, that data is a reflection of you. It represents your mental labor, your physical labor, your emotional labor. Are we going to have a conversation around, or how do we build up some way for you to like own that and have some sovereignty around that, and not just because there's digital versions of you that already exist. Like Facebook had this
Mm.
avatar program. You've heard of the avatar program at Facebook?
No, tell me more.
Basically, this is like one of the tools that they use to get even more exacting in their ad revenue space. Was they would look at so they'd look at Keira, they'd look at your profile across their apps, what you've said, the way you write, the products you interact with, the people you interact with, your family, your friends, the places that you've been, and they would basically create an avatar of you in this program of Keira, and they would say, okay, we're now going to take a group of like test products, and we're going to throw it at Keira's avatar and see if her avatar would respond favorably to these products. And then based on whether you would or you wouldn't, like if they say yes and they'd have a percentage like 80%, she's going to say yes to like this product. They then go to that company and they say, we've got a targeted user that we think has got, like, this person's got a really good chance of saying yes to you. And they would charge them basically for the access to sell to you. So they've got these kind of like AI avatars spun up of like a lot of their users.
They
So
were doing that?
100%. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Still to this day. Like one of the
How did I miss that? And, like, I guess that even brings into more of the, like, more recent discussion and debates when Anthropic were talking with the Department of Defense around, like, global surveillance of people. So if companies like Facebook or Meta are doing this to just, like, do is, like, qualified lead generation, but, like, on the surveillance level of, like, for the whole entire government of maybe, like, America or any other company or any in for the so to speak, like, what information and what little digital profiles or avatars are they creating for us? And, like, and even you need to be thinking twice what you're giving these models because, say, for example, I'm feeling really emotional one day, I type in all those really emotional things, it might flag me or characterize me as, like, an emotionally unstable person, and then, like, consequence, like, the long-term consequence of, like, me how I have, like, a flag of emotionally unstable, like, that could be perpetuated and exaggerated massively, like, so it's like the wrong input of like this initial one-off data can have serious consequences if agents are only looking at that data to make decisions.
100%. 100%. No, we're all very manipulatable. I think that we need to have a little more humility around how easily we are manipulated. Because I think a lot of folks in this day and age have been manipulated basically from a social media feed without realizing it. And that social
Mm.
media feed is something that you're really only going to, a lot of us are going to for entertainment or to connect for a couple hours a day. But when you look at agents, we're going to be talking, we could potentially be working with an agent 3, 5, 7 hours a day in the future of work. And that agent's going to know a hell of a lot more about you. So now what happens when that agent is, basically the back end is completely opened up to governments or it's opened up to the biggest advertisers, the companies that can pay, and they want to really find out how to sell you on something. Like, we need to have a conversation around data proprietorship and data sovereignty to make sure that we at least have, if things go wrong, at least at the very least, if like you have people that start harming themselves or, acting, erratically or whatever because of what their agent is telling them, there's got to be recourse. There's got to be some protections in place for the actual human because we are far more vulnerable mentally and emotionally than I think any of us think we are.
Yeah, and it comes down to like who owns that agent. Is it the platform that owns the agent? Is it us who's feeding that agent with all that information? Like, there's a whole nother realm of ownership debates that will be going on. And then also like when you sort to like have different agents on different platforms and how to like you don't want them all on the same one thing because that seems more dangerous, but you kind of like you all want them to be talking together. So it's like I guess it comes back round to that encrypted storage and having your data so it can be encrypted and stored and shared across whatever applications that you own have.
Mm.
Um, I guess that's an interesting thing to be
Yeah.
exploring. But
Well, no, so,
um,
yeah, getting back to the question that you originally asked before I went on my tangent of, like, am I happy that I'm here and, like, what I've done something else or whatever, like, our goal was really we never I don't know that we ever really thought with my network that we were gonna create some crazy new global, like, billion user app per se.
mm,
It was more that we just wanted to work with other decentralized projects to allow the ability for users to start protecting their data and have some leverage. Like in my mind, if we got to a couple million users that were using our products for trading or for interacting with agents, a couple million is like a strong start. And now at least users have an option and early, like tech early people can like start to use this and proliferate the use case. And now there's some clout. Now there's some leverage on the side of users that are interested in the things that we're talking about to push back against what seems to just be this like unstoppable force of a handful of companies delivering us all of our agents. They own the agents, they own the data. Sorry, there's nothing you can do about it. Sorry if it blows up your life. Sorry if all your data gets hacked, whatever. Like, at least we need to have leverage to even like generate those conversations. And that was our goal, I think, with my network. And that's going to be my goal, for the foreseeable future is just to kind of keep building out privacy products and platforms and protocols to just keep galvanizing the retail user, the individual developer, and hopefully one of these, like across a suite of products, we start to get millions of users and you start to kind of a really real grassroots movement around people that are probably a little bit more tech savvy than the average user, but at
mhm.
least those tech savvy people are going to show what's possible. and we can start to generate conversations at the policy level, at the regulatory level, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, you're starting to build your small army that actually understand what you're doing rather than try to educate the masses around what's actually possible. And then hopefully that there will act as a president and, good value. And if you're creating something that is better and provides value and to people, they will sort of naturally gravitate back towards you. And I like the analogy that you mentioned to begin with, or like earlier on, is like it's going to become a flex to actually own your own data. Like you mentioned, the analogy to flexing of owning your own house with just cash. It's entirely yours, and that is a flex because you're not reliant on anybody else. You've got full control and capacity over it. So, and if you're building infrastructure that allows that, working behind the scenes, people don't really need to know that you're there, but they just need to know that the level of protection is there, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So anyway, I want to wrap this one up, but it's been so interesting talking to you. I've really enjoyed like this whole entire boom of the agentic economy is fascinating. Yeah, and I also do agree it's not happening in 2030; it's happening right now. We can see that with OpenClaw, and that was absolutely littered with my socials for a few months when it just came out, and I was just consistently mind blown. I couldn't get enough of it, but I was intrinsically super scared to start interacting with it because I was unsure of the power of how it could actually go into all of my own private information and destroy my whole entire computer and leak things or do things that I didn't know what was possible. So actually on that, like, do you think that what you're building there, like your infrastructure, how accessible is that going to be to like the person like myself just sitting here? I'm like a AI enthusiast, or I guess you could say I'm not like a big institute, but like I'm wanting that sort of level of privacy. Like, how accessible is what you're building there going to be for somebody like me?
You can launch an agent right now through our platform, and we've had a bunch of users do so. But what we've done really is kind of make it available like B2B. So
Sure.
companies, enterprises, other projects basically can like register on our network to keep some of the agent communication secure. So that's something that like agent launchpads would do. So it's more like right now it's more B2B again for like the same
Mm.
for I mean you can use it for retail, but we go back and forth with our products. So like this OpenClaw product that we're working on now, I don't know the release date, but that's going to have to be made available obviously to the retail users because it's in the open cloud world. It's just us launching these agents, and so it has to be kind of slick and like easy UX. So I'll keep you in the loop with that for sure. You can try it out.
Sounds good. I might be one of the yeah, I'll be lining up. But also, before we wrap this up, there's one question that I like to ask everybody that comes on here. And knowing everything you do against your business, your relationships, obviously privacy, and everything that you're building over there right now, if you had one message to tell your 17-year-old version of yourself, what would you say?
Oof, that's a great question. Oh my gosh. Um, I'd say Christian, pay more attention to the things that piss you off. Pay more attention because like I would, yeah, for sure. Like I think the best way to find the work that's meant for you and your calling is to pay attention to that which really bothers you about the world. And I was just trying to, for most of my 20s, I think I was just like just trying to make money like everybody else. But it's way more satisfying to be working on big problems, even if they seem impossible, because they're problems that directly talk to you. They just get under your skin. So I would have said that at 17, like pay more attention to that which pisses you off, go into that, be pissed off about it, and start finding like positive solutions to it.
That sounds, yeah, very fitting. Don't chase the razzle tazzle, like chase what's actually the root cause, even though so if it might be boring or something, but it's obviously something that frustrates you. And if it frustrates you, that fire is never gonna go out until you figure it out. So
Yeah.
yeah. And where can people find you, connect with you, follow what you're doing, perhaps get access to this new privacy layer that you're building for OpenClaw? What's the best way to stay in touch and up to date?
So my handles across social media is DAO Data, TAOOFDATA. It's my X handle and Telegram. And then obviously I'm on LinkedIn. And then my network, obviously, we post all the time. Whenever we've got products, we're posting partnerships. We post some my network underscore XYZ on Twitter.
There we go. Thank you so much for sharing all of the info. It was a lot of fun chatting with you today.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, Kara. Thank you.